Okay, what's up, everyone? So today we're going to talk a little bit about just kind of going over objectives, such as like generic zones. So there's a couple of flaws that come with the generic zone that we're going to kind of fix today and kind of work on. And a couple of those flaws indicate just nav markers, just the generic zone that we have here. And so basically you have a couple different flaws with it. The first flaw that we notice is you cannot change, like, this is the max amount of indicators or icons that you can have. So you only have default, you only have capture, you only have capture A, B, and C. Along with the flaws, you do have no matter where I put these zones, no matter how far away I am from them, they're always going to show up on my screen. And so if you've got a pretty big map, or a map that encompasses the entire area, if you have, I think the max is 32 icons that you can have on your screen, or nav markers that you can have at a time, and this includes generic zones. So if you have 32 generic zones on your screen, it's going to get super cluttered. You're going to always have those dots on there and stuff like that, and that can be quite annoying. So in order to clean this up and to make this better, that's just what this video is about. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these. I think it's this one. So we're going to take this one, which is neutral team, and we're going to edit it and change how it's supposed to look, or how we want it to look. We're going to give it a zone that if the player's in the zone, or a certain meters away from it, that they'll be able to see it. And then we're going to change the icon itself. We're going to change a couple of different features about it, and we're also going to make it spawn an object based on what team has captured it. So we're going to completely destroy this and build it back up. And what we'll do is, tell you what, we'll go ahead and we will grab everything that we need right here. So we're going to need a script brain for each one, okay? And it is important that the script brain is as close to the zone as possible, as far as the icon for it, because you want the icon of like the zone. So like this icon right here, we're going to attach it to the script brain. So we're going to move it off of this object right here. We're going to put it on the script brain, so we want it to be as identical to the middle as possible. And then what we're also going to do is we're just going to grab, let's say blue team is, we'll get a little creative with this. Let's say blue team is the Covenant. And so let's just grab a really cool like object here to put in the middle. And then let's say that the other team is the Banished, maybe? Question mark. Let's do something that looks kind of neat and isn't too out of the way. I guess we could just do a spike or a trap. Yeah, so we'll just do this. So our objective with this, right, is to do a couple different things. First off, we're going to make it to where certain objects spawn when this zone is captured. Second off, we're going to get rid of this extremely hideous bee looking thing, and we're just going to replace it with something better. So we need this script brain here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the script brain. We're going to do a couple different things, right? So first off, we're going to need all these objects. So we're going to grab all three of them, and we're going to put them all... Oh, sorry. Make sure that your objects are set to dynamic if you're going to be listing them inside of a script brain. So we've got our two cover options there. And then we're also going to drag our generic zone. So we're going to work on the generic zone. So we're just going to put these guys off to the right over here. And here's what we're going to do, okay? So we are going to, the second the game starts, we're going to break this down. The second the gameplay starts, we want to attach our own nav marker. So we're going to go all the way down to UI nav markers, and we're going to attach a nav marker. But before we attach it, right, so we've got to do a couple different things. What do we want our nav marker to look like? What do we want it to be icon wise? Do we want it to have a progress bar? What features do we want this generic zone to have? So we're going to do first off, we're going to attach it to an object. We're going to give it an icon. We're going to not touch the progress. Sorry, my cat keeps trying to attack the screen. We're going to set a text, or actually we'll get we'll do a little more. We'll do a message, and so we'll be a little more sophisticated with this. We're going to also have to enable it, so we have to turn the nav marker on. Set nav marker enable. So we're going to turn it on. We're going to attach. We're going to turn it on. We're going to set it to be a certain icon. We're going to set the message, and then we're going to attach it to an item. So we want to turn it on, and it doesn't have to be in this order. Just make sure that the turning on feature is either first or last, depending on how you want it to look, and we'll go over that too. So the nav marker is just going to be generic, or we'll just call it zone 1. All right, and then feature all of these. And then another thing is, if we're going to have a lot of zones, what do we want? So we want a parameter to where when the player is within a certain area, visibility parameters. So when the player is in a certain area, then we want it to be turned off. So let's say if they are outside of the range of 10, then it's going to turn off. We're just going to attach the object here. We do have to get a math node. I forget if it's vector. No. Oh, wait, no, never mind. It's not in math. It is a math node, but it's not in math. It's wrongly categorized. So it's actually going to be a vector in the variable basic folder. And we're going to plug the offset into that vector. And then we're going to set all of these to 0. Setting these to 0 is important. You don't want it to be set to anything else. And then the generic zone part, so we actually don't need that at all. What we do need is we need the script brain itself. So we need this bad boy, which is what I meant to grab. So we need the script brain, and then the object, and then there's a message here. So we get a UI. We go to, let's just say, we're going to plug this in. So we're actually going to name it, right? We're going to do string, and we're just going to name this I'm terrible with this. We're going to name this the Armor Hall, because why not? And so now when we go into, make sure that this is turned on. Now when we go into our mode, sorry, I forgot to set an icon. We will name, we'll give it a really cool icon, so it's not like, anything weird. And oh man, we just have so many options. I'm so glad that they did this. We're gonna do like a mythic icon of some kind. And so now, right, when we get within a certain range, all of a sudden that icon pulls up. But we notice here that we still have the B. And so we want to get rid of the B. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go into the actual item itself, and we're going to turn that off. And I think 10 is a little bit too short, so we're actually going to change this to about 30. And if you didn't notice, it is a little lower than what we want, so we probably want to lower this a little bit just so that it looks a little cleaner. And then we're going to set the stronghold incoming message. Yep, incoming timer to 0. And I think that should get rid of the, yeah. So make sure that there's no incoming timer, or else it's gonna spawn in and then it'll go away. But basically this is now our armor hall. So we'll notice that, oh, when we're capturing it, there's nothing happening. Like there's no change of color or anything like that. So on to the next phase. Basically what we want to do is we want to, every second, we want to get the number variable that is attached to this object. So we're going to go to events. We're going to go, custom events. We're going to do every second. We want to update this marker, the zone, to the generic zone. So we're going to tie these two together so that the progress of the generic zone is updating the progression of the nav marker. And so what we'll do is we'll then go back into our lovely nav markers here, and we're going to go to setting the nav marker progress. So it has been a while since I've done this. We're going to set it to 10 seconds with a delay of 0. And so the second the gameplay starts, it's just going to start counting. It's going to link this nav marker to the progress of this. Now you'll notice we can't just plug this in, right? So we have to do something a little bit more different. And we actually have to get the progress of the generic zone. So we're going to go into generic objects. And I think generic zone progress, I think it's this right here. So we're going to get the progress of the generic zone. And so this is actually all we need to then start setting the progress of the nav marker. And so we're just going to test it real quick so that you guys can see what it looks like base set. And there we go. And so if you want to change, right, how fast the zone is captured, that's going to be in the actual zone object. So time to capture, we're going to set it to, let's do 8. And we'll notice that when we go back in, right, oh, now it's doing a lot more smoothly. It's going per half of a tenth of a second, and then it's captured. But oh, the color of it's not changing. We've got a couple different issues here, but we do notice that our zone disappears after we reach 30 meters. And so that's a nice little feature there. So just know that that does work. But we're going to go back into our zone. So now we've got it constantly updating. We've got the zone, marking after 30 meters. We've given it its own icon. What else is next? So what's next is we can just tie it to here. And we can do, on generic zone captured. So we want to get events on generic objects. And we want to do generic zone capture complete. What I do though is I typically do capture secured. So complete and secured are the same thing, but they're slightly different. The difference I don't know, but I do know that capture secured I think works better. And so what we're going to do is whenever this generic zone is captured, we actually want to change the nav marker team. So we're going to do set nav marker team right here, and we're going to change this nav marker. So you can if you want, you can tie this directly to this just to save an extra node, but I'm literally not using this for anything else. And so on captured, right, we just want to set it to eagle. Now we're missing an important step here. We need to know what team has captured it. So if we go to logic, we go to branch, right? We need the controlling team to here. So you could do a branch and you could set all that, but what we're going to do instead, just to save, on some space, we're just going to plug the team into the controlling team. So that way it should, if I recall, or is it capture team? Let's test this out first off. So it should now change it to whatever team has captured the zone. So you'll notice too that the nav marker is stuck to that position. So we're going to change that here after, right? We're going to change that here after, and we're going to make it to where it's docked to the player's team. Don't you worry. We're going to make sure it's docked. We just want to test this and make sure that, it's actually changing the color when the team captures it to the according team that has captured the zone. And so that doesn't seem to be working. So maybe it is the other node. You need to go to events. On generic zone, capture secured, capture complete. So let's change this. I think the difference between the capture secured and the capture complete is the capture secured is like if another team is combating it and you secure the capture versus the new controlling team for the on it actually being captured. So the first node that I was trying to use is like if another team comes in and tries to stop you, but then you secure the capture. So I think that's the difference. And there we go. So we have now it's changing colors. If I go back to Cobra, I should be able to capture it now on Cobra, and it should change for me. But you'll notice that it's still working. It's red, right? There's my dead body. And so if I capture this, it changes back. Nice, right? So really pretty, super sufficient. And so now what we want to do is, like we were saying earlier, the issue that we're having is that it's not docking. So what we need to do is we need to get the area of the zone, right? So when the player enters the zone, the nav marker that we created gets docked to their screen. And so we are going to need, the generic zone here. And what we're going to do is we're going to get that custom event for whenever a player enters the zone, which is going to be on object entered, and we are going to need on object exited. And so we're going to set this up completely different, and we're going to go into our basics. We're going to do an area monitor. I don't know why I'm using controller when I have both controller and mouse. I keep switching between the two. If you didn't know this though, you can plug. You don't need to do this twice. You can plug this into both areas. And what we're simply going to do is we're going to dock this nav marker. Like I said, you can funnel everything to the same nav marker, right? Or funnel it all here and just, put this here and whatever. But just to keep everything separate, I'm going to do it differently. And then we're going to dock it. So what are we docking? We're docking the nav marker. So we're going to set the nav marker, remove player docking. We do need that. And then we're going to set docking. So set player, set all. No, we need just one. Nav marker, player docking. So set player docking. So we actually, this would be removing it entirely versus this is setting it. So we need to set this nav marker to this object, and we need this to be true. And then I think if we do, if we do this again, but then we set it to false, it should turn it off. Because I'm pretty sure the remove player docking is like for all players. So we're going to set this to false. We're just going to delete this. So this should be what you need to dock it to the player's screen. And so if you're not familiar with what docking is, you'll see here that the second we walk into the screen, there we go. The second we walk into the screen, it docks it to my screen hub so I can see the progression. The second we walk out of it, it puts it freely on the screen, right? So second we walk into the zone, and it should tell us too, you should stay. Yep, so it just kind of stays there so you know what zone you're in. It's not really in the way or anything. And then when you leave, it goes back. So now if we change teams to Cobra, right? It should have, just like that. And it should work the same. So on player dock, when you leave, it exits and it stops capturing. What we want to do next is we want to set it to where when one team owns something, right? It has spawns and deletes. So the two objects, that is, if you didn't catch that. So basically what we want to do is, on this complete, we want to set the nav marker to whatever team, but then we want another one, or we could even use the same one if you want. I'll tell you what, let's just, for hindsight, we'll just do that. So it'll change the color of it to whatever the team is that's controlling it, but then after that, we can do if, right? An if statement of logic branch. And so we can branch this here, and then we can do compare teams, which is going to be right here. So right off the bat, we're just going to compare the teams. The controlling team that it gets set to, if that team is Eagle, right, we want to delete and spawn things. So let's say, I'm assuming that if you're using this feature, you're going to have multiple objects. So let's just do 4 objects, right? And then for this, let's do 4 objects as well, because you guys are going to need to know how to do it the most efficient way for multiple objects. So I'll just teach you that right off the bat. So we're just going to grab all these. We're going to set these in here. I'm going to have these up there, those down there. So we'll have, you know, Team Eagle will be Covenant, and Team 1 will be Covenant, Team 2 will be the Banished. And so a lot of people will tell you that you can just kind of have like the delete node. And so you can do spawn, you can do delete, and then most people will just make a line like this and just have it, you know, delete, 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 which is pretty efficient, honestly. You know, especially if you're trying to keep nodes down. But what most scripters do, because what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to call to a list. So we're going to need like delete these objects, but then also spawn these objects. And so just to keep things organized, right, we're going to create a list, and we're going to put all these objects in the list. And then we're just going to delete and spawn the appropriate lists that we need. So we have our Covenant objects here. We have our, you know, Team 1, Team 2, however you want to word that. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab a simple list. We're going to go to variable basics. We're going to do object list. And we're going to tie these into to create the 2 lists that we need. And then we're going to do for each object, so we're going to go to logic, and for each object in this list, what are we doing? We're spawning. And then for each object in this list, right, on completion of spawning, we're going to delete. So now, instead of having a ton of, you know, add and delete things, we can just tie it back to those, to these lists of Team 1 and Team 2. And we can say when this is captured, you know, it's gonna spawn the appropriate ones and delete the old ones. And then if it's not Team A, where's our spawn one at for Team A? This one. So we need to delete these and spawn these. And so if it's not Team A and it's Team B, it'll delete the appropriate ones. So right off the bat though, right, if we go into our game mode, we'll notice that all the objects are there, and then only when someone on one of the teams captures it does it delete the opposing team's stuff. And so what we actually want is we don't want any of these objects in the field at all when gameplay start. So we can say on gameplay start, we can delete, and we'll do a, like I said, I'm not too stingy right now on nodes. I do recommend, if you can, funnel this somehow, because this is connected to on gameplay start. Funnel this to like also do on gameplay start, delete all these objects if you can. But we're just gonna do this real quick, where we take all of these objects, and on gameplay start, which I already have up here, we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to delete everything except for the nav marker, the object itself that can be captured. So when we go into the game, there should be nothing, and then on a player capturing it, which I guess I'll change this to less time to capture, so we'll do like 4 seconds. Whenever you go in, you know, you start capturing it, it's pretty quick. Now we will notice that when I have captured it, boom. And then if we switch teams real quick and we go to Eagle, just to skip the spawn time, if we go to Eagle, then the Covenant stuff should spawn instead. So we just want to make sure that our zone is actually working. It does look like it's doing fine. So if I switch back over to the Banished team, and I go over here, and I capture this. So once I capture this, this should delete, and it should spawn our objects for my appropriate team, just like that. So this is how you guys create a custom generic zone, however you want to do it. You can actually copy and paste this too if you want, but just to kind of go back over it real quick. So you need a couple of things. If you have objects, you're gonna need all this. If not, if you don't have any objects at all, you don't need any of this. I'm gonna delete this because we really just want to focus on these things. But you're gonna need this for every single zone. And so if you want for every single, if you have more than 2 zones, just simply tie this to the next zone. Like make this its own feed, and just tie this to the next set progress. And it should work fine. You don't want too many, on every second of something happening. So you want to keep that, if possible, unless you have a very small map, but if possible, just keep one of these, because if not, then it's really hard in the engine. So on gameplay start, we're setting, we're enabling the node, we're setting the icon of the node, we're giving it a message, we're attaching it to the appropriate object, and then we're setting the parameters, which is more important, to how far. If you don't want it to have parameters, you want people to see it all the time, delete this node. You don't need this. And then every second we want to update the progress of this nav marker for this node through this guy. And then whenever the capture is complete, we're going to update it to the appropriate team, and this is per capture, so it doesn't matter what team you're on. And then this is going to be when you enter and exit the zone. It'll dock it and undock it. So that's basically it. It's a really simple script. Definitely recommend you guys use it for your maps, especially if you want to use something other than the generic A, B, and C. Other than that, I hope this was helpful, and if you like it, please like and subscribe, or comment for anything else that you guys want to know how to script. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a good day. Bye.